Quer desenvolver os talentos da sua equipe e potencializar os resultados da sua empresa? Conte com a expertise do atendimento corporativo do Senac São Paulo, que já capacitou mais de 1 milhão de pessoas e profissionais de instituições públicas, privadas e terceiro setor. Construa uma equipe altamente motivada e capacitada e destaque-se no mercado. Entre em contato, acesse sp.senac.br/corporativo e saiba mais. Quer saber? Senac.
Today on CityCast Madison. It's the Friday News Roundup. This week, I'm joined by CityCast Madison's Haley Sperling and Ava Wynowski. Residents at an Eastside apartment complex say they're working upstream to find healing after multiple deadly shootings. A new state report says childcare costs in Dane County are up as much as 15% since 2022. And calls for thoughtful conservation efforts for two of our state's most iconic birds. It's Friday, August 2nd. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. All right, welcome to the Friday News Roundup. Here on CityCast Madison, we are living some glory dreams watching the Olympics. We are going for gold, and we are proud. We're proud of our Olympians. We've sent Badgers to the Paris Olympics, and personally, I cannot stop watching the success of Simone Biles and our U.S. gymnasts. She's now the most decorated gymnast in history. Okay, that had to go at the top of our Madison-based conversation. Okay, let's vault right in from one capital city, Paris, to our own Madison. Joining me today is the leader of this podcast, Haley Sperling. Hey, girl.
Hey, we're vaulting into it. I love that.
Vaulting in. And our interim newsletter editor, Ava Wynowski. Hey.
Hey, Haley. Hey, Bianca.
So, Madison News. Haley, you're kicking us off this week with actually a bit of a tougher conversation.
Yeah. So we're starting off the day with a harder conversation, and we're going to be talking about gun violence here, which is not fun, but unfortunately, like something that we do have to talk about and something that our entire country needs to be talking about. And to preface this, like, I just want to give a point that we really don't cover crime a whole lot in the podcast or the newsletter, unless it really affects the greater community. You know, like, we're not really about like the gratuitous or salacious crime coverage. That's not really what we need to hear. But when it has a broader impact on the community, like this story, I think it's super important that we bring it up. So here we are. And today we're talking about something that happened on the Far East Side. Last week, Madison police announced that they had arrested 4 men in connection with the October 2023 shooting death of 15-year-old Kaisha Miller. So she was killed at the Harmony at Grandview Apartments, which is at the corner of Milwaukee Street and Milky Way on the Far East Side. And 3 other people were also injured in that incident as well. An important thing to note here is that Kaisha's death came just months after 20-year-old Devon Grant was shot and killed in the exact same apartment complex in July of 2023. And residents of this complex say that a major problem and contributing factor to these truly horrific incidents is the lack of presence and understanding from the building's management. So, like, truly property managers not stepping up. There are a lot of kids and teens that live in this complex, and there's a playground nearby, and that's nice for like the young kids to use. But residents have said that like there's just not a lot of activities for these older kids to take part in. And so like they get bored, they end up on social media, which shows them that if you have an issue with someone, violence is the answer, and they act on the things that they see around them. Devon's mother has been a big advocate for residents in the complex and has tried to help this situation by putting together activities for kids and teens to participate in, you know, on the weekends and after school. They've put up like bounce houses and slip and slides and all these fun things, basketball hoops and whatnot. But property managers have come back and said, no, that's not allowed. And they even went as far to fine her for one of these actions, which is just kind of insane. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. She was like, yeah, I was going to plan on doing like a water balloon fight for the kids, but after I got this fine, I decided not to do it. And then later that week, an actual fight broke out at the apartment complex. So it's just super frustrating. And the residents of this apartment complex are really still reeling from the effects of these truly violent events, especially the kids that live there. Some have reported anxiety, depression, and even fear of going outside because they're also faced with these sort of daily reminders of what happened. Residents said that it took building management 4 months to patch up bullet holes in their apartments. So not only do they have to witness these events happen, they have to live with it, like these daily reminders, day in and day out. Management also had taken down memorial flowers and stuffed animals that the community had put up to honor both Devon and Kaisha. And it's just kind of like,
it's like an act of violence.
That really is, right? It's like an act of violence in response to an act of violence, right? Yeah, they said that they'll put up memorial stones and around the building eventually, but like that's yet to happen. So it's just, we're talking about this because this is a bigger issue in the community, right? And this is a big example of like how community heals community, because the residents of this building are really trying to come together to make this happen and to help each other heal and to figure out ways to help these kids be productive rather than bored and leading down the wrong paths. So, there have been some nonprofits that came in to help lead these discussions and to help lead folks in the right direction. But it's this ongoing issue that I feel like if the city and if the community does not talk and does not act on this now, we are only going to see more of these kinds of events and more of these sort of negligent property managers popping up as Madison continues to grow, right? Yes, people may say this is not happening in my backyard, whatever, but it's happening not that far away. And the likelihood of it to spread is very high. Gun violence is a public health epidemic.
And it also, some of the actions that you're talking about just scream cultural insensitivity.
Yes.
And just not, that's not something we want either. That is not something that we want for our community. So,
yeah. And I kind of want to echo a little bit of what you were talking about, Haley, with the kind of isolation that this building has. I know in the Wisconsin State Journal article that was posted about this shooting that the structure is largely isolated from activities, services, grocery stores, and shops. And so I'm really interested to see kind of, as you said, with Madison growing and more apartment complexes popping up and more housing popping up, kind of like how that's going to spread out and how there will be more housing, but maybe less restaurants, less shops, and all that kind of other stuff around the city. And I'm interested to see how that kind of plays a role in impacting all of this.
Yeah, it's really about building those resources for communities to be able to thrive, right? And this is one of those sections of the city where like there's not a whole lot going around. It's District 3 in terms of aldermanic districts, and the alder for that district is Derek Field. And I've just kind of like looking through his blog recently, and I have not seen him say anything about either the arrests or the shootings, which is kind of also,
that's strange.
Yeah, exactly. Because normally, you see your elected officials stepping up, especially, when police did make an arrest. Like that is a success on the city. They arrested 4 people in connection with Kaisha's killing. But I'd like to see the city paying a little bit more attention. And again, the property managers stepping up here, because that's a huge issue. I also just wanted to give a shout out to Channel 3000, like News 3. They have been covering this story and this community with a lot of care and a lot of depth for at least a year. Like I said, Devon's shooting, like that happened in July of 2023. We're in August now. This is still a story that we're talking about in large part due to their coverage. So shout out to them. Shout out to the local news paying attention to the community, because we really love to see that.
Definitely. Well, and shout out to you for bringing the story forward, Haley. We're going to keep talking about issues that matter, especially talking about stepping up. We're going to talk about childcare next. But before we dive into more of our local news, let's take a quick break.
Enquanto você curte som, a ClearSale cuida da segurança antifraude de mais de 100 mil empresas em todo o mundo. Só falta a sua. Fale com os nossos especialistas e fique um passo à frente das fraudes e riscos de crédito. Encontre soluções flexíveis que se adaptam às necessidades da sua empresa e garanta múltiplas camadas de proteção em cada transação. ClearSale, one step ahead.
Você que está aqui ouvindo o seu podcast, é empreendedor ou tem o sonho de ter seu próprio negócio de sucesso? Então, prepare-se para uma jornada inspiradora com o podcast Negócio de Sucesso da GetNet. Sob o comando da atriz e empreendedora Maria Gal, você vai mergulhar em histórias de empreendedores de diferentes segmentos e regiões do país que certamente vão dar dicas para impulsionar o seu negócio ou ajudar você a realizar o sonho de empreender. Acompanhe os episódios quinzenalmente às 10 horas. O sucesso espera por você.
All right. So we are now switching gears to talk about childcare in our communities. There's a crisis. It's been ongoing. And this week we saw an article at the Cap Times about an update on costs for childcare in our county. The latest, Wisconsin Department of Children and Families, which regulates childcare providers, just published a state market rate survey by county that says childcare costs are up by as much as 15% since 2022. So in just 2 years, the survey found childcare costs in counties like Dane County were 9% to 15% higher last year than in 2022, depending on the age group and provider type. So that's really significant, and it's hurting both families and providers. I think it's fair to say that the pandemic really put childcare considerations into sharp relief and gave it a whole level of new attention because a lot of parents, inflation, rising costs, but a lot of parents are working from home. And the calls were coming from inside the house. And so something that we know is families can already be spending like 18 to 36% of their median income on childcare. And what we're seeing is inflation is slowly dropping, but the childcare costs are not. So I saw a report quoted from the nonpartisan research group Ford Analytics that said childcare in our state can be more expensive than college. So
that's crazy.
That is insane, It's insane. And it's having a toll on not just families, but also the service providers and people who offer the childcare. There are wait lists for spaces. It's in the article, it pointed out that in Madison, there's a wait list for the Big Oak Childcare on Winnebago Street. And it's more than 80 families. And another at Bright Child Learning Center on Maple Valley Drive, that wait list is over 100 families. So people are trying to get service. It's not a great picture on either side of the table. So a lot of service providers are reporting still experiencing a ton of staff turnover because the burnout is real and the jobs are not well paid. And so just something that really stood out from that article was one of the childcare service providers were quoted saying that she wants to see childcare and early education get the same public funding support as K-12 schooling, which I think is really an interesting idea and something that you don't hear as often, but it's a part of the educational process. And it's just such a necessary component for everyone. And it doesn't always get the time of day. It just really strikes me. It's just, we're one of the only industrialized nations that don't prioritize paid leave. We really have some interesting ideas about progress that are not very inclusive to parents and especially working mothers. So we talked a lot about this last year, but around our state's childcare subsidies. And I think that those are also in high relief right now on the national scale. I think that, now that we have Kamala Harris, who has been tapped to be the Democratic nominee for president, those conversations, that's something that she's really putting forward, is talking about childcare. Here in our state, the Childcare Counts was a subsidy that came out during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was set to expire at the beginning of this year. But last year, Governor Tony Evers allocated $170 million in federal dollars to continue the subsidy at half its previous funding levels. So, it's still half-life of what is this major, massive need. And it's a tough picture all around. And it's something, just like the first story we shared, that we wanted to bring forward and bring into the conversation, because it's just expected that people carry those burdens, and it tends to fall on women more than anyone else. So
it falls on women. And it's crazy too, because these stories all play a role together, right? Without affordable childcare, you have these kids that are bored at home again. And without professionals that are getting paid living wages, you have this major burnout that contributes to this lack of childcare. And I think we see this happening with our teachers in Madison school districts and in school districts across the country, truly, that they are getting burnt out at levels that we have not seen before. And no one wants to do these jobs because it's hard to deal with these kids. But it also starts when the kids are younger and they don't have sufficient childcare. And then everyone's like blaming the parents. But also, why are you blaming the parents?
And then you see violence.
Right. These parents have to do work.
People who aren't taken care of.
People aren't being taken care of. People are working really hard to get by. There's so many of these issues that are interconnected. And again, it really starts with like providing care and providing basic needs for people, right? People shouldn't have to be concerned about, do I have to go to my shift at work or can I afford to get childcare? You know, it's this crazy like double-edged sword, and everyone needs more money is the moral of the story, right? All these programs need more money.
Yeah. And the idea of funding childcare and early education the same as K through 12 schooling, it's just like, well, we know the Madison schools are also asking for more money.
Everyone needs money.
Yeah.
But then it's like, how do we give that industry more money? I don't know. Because, you know, schools, like they'll go to the referendums to raise property taxes. Like, how does childcare, how does that industry get more money? Is it just through the state? Is it through like national organization? I don't know. Is it through like going private? But also that would probably get really expensive and that cost gets passed on to the parents. I don't have the answers. If you do have the answers, give us a call. Send us an email, madison@citycast.fm. I would love to hear from a childcare professional just about how we can be solutions based in our approach to this overarching question. Because so much of this starts with early childcare.
Yeah.
And Bianca, I know you talked about that child care counts subsidy that's going on right now, but I know that in that Cap Times article, they said that that's going to end next summer. So then it's like this whole conversation of what's that going to look like? How's that going to affect things? What are people going to do? So a lot of questions in the air right now about all the child care and the costs that that's putting on a lot of different families.
And speaking about things that are in the air and sometimes in the water, Ava, we got some fun, y'all. We know we've been bringing you to heavies, but I guess some of this is a mixed bag. But Ava, you have some stories about our avian friends.
Incredible segue per usual, Bianca. But
that was A+, yeah.
That was A+ material. I had to call that out. But yeah, so I got two bird stories for y'all. One is a little bit sadder than the other, so I'll kind of start off on the sadder one so we can end on a little bit of a brighter note. But a story that was just reposted by Channel 3000 explains how climate change is driving loons out of Wisconsin and their state, Minnesota, as well. As many know, the loon is the Minnesota state bird.
I did not know that. It's a good one.
It's a good one.
It's a good pick.
What's ours?
I think a robin. Cardinal? Robin? Okay. Now I'm embarrassed.
No, I'm the embarrassing one. I don't know anything.
It's the American robin. That's Wisconsin's state bird, technically.
Oh, I like the loon better, so okay, carry on.
I agree.
Sorry, diss.
No, all good. But kind of the question is, why exactly is this happening? And to begin, people have noticed that a lot of loons that are still present in the area are a lot smaller than they used to be. A loon chick usually weighs about 3.5 pounds, but now they're weighing closer to 3 pounds. And the reasoning behind this is that the lakes are much more polluted and murky than they used to be. And how loons get their food is they kind of dive into water and they forage through the water, and it often obviously helps when the water is clear. But due to pollution and murkier water, it's a lot harder for loons to catch their food, both for the adult loons, and then obviously the adult loons are providing for those baby loons. So a lot of them are not as well fed due to the lack of ability to find food in the water. And another issue that's happening, and as we all know, it's been a really hot, really rainy summer. This brings on a lot of black flies. So they are more present than normal, which also tends to swarm the loons, and they get kind of annoyed as it drives them out of their nests. So these are a couple different reasons as to why loons aren't as present. And a lot of it has to do with, obviously, the big conversation of climate change. Professor Walter Piper, a biology professor at Chapman University in California, said that his data of loons in northern Wisconsin shows that they are dropping about 6% a year. So by these calculations, we will have almost no loons in northern Wisconsin in 20 years from now. So it's really interesting, obviously kind of definitely sad to see how climate change is taking a toll on all the ecosystems around us.
Gosh, what a bummer week we have here.
The news is not the best this week, guys.
It's not the best, but I'm sure there's something that we can do to help these loons, and I'm sure there are conservation efforts that are happening as well. But I mean, all's to say, we got to clean up our lakes. Loons
are some of the most majestic birds too.
So
I mean, they're not like the big cranes, which we're going to talk about the cranes, but they've got like, don't they have red eyes?
I think they're like males black. Have like red accents, like red on accents. Their feathers.
Okay, yeah.
Again, I'm making a lot of this up.
No, I love this No. We're bringing you fake bird news.
I'm no birder. But I'm trying to be.
I think they do. Some of them, they have red. I'm just going to look it up. Jeez Louise.
No, they do. They do.
Okay, yeah. They have red eyes.
They do have red eyes, which
I
is
need
crazy.
to believe in myself more because I typically know. And I'm like, what am I talking about? No. So red-eyed loons, they are also like really sacred and special to different native tribes in the state as well.
Yes.
And they can dive super, super deep. And I just think of them as the most mystical, ethereal bird. So that makes me really sad to hear they're getting smaller and that their population's threatened.
They're kind of like spooky ducks.
They're spooky ducks.
And I like them.
I love a spooky
duck a lot. And the babies are so cute. But
Ava,
you said you did have some good news for us, right?
Some good news, yeah. So for my second bird story, it's a bit of a lighter note, like I was saying. And I know personally I've noticed a higher population of the sandhill cranes in Madison. I don't know if other folks have. I've been seeing them everywhere.
Yeah, they are.
They're all over the place. I was hammocking the other day by Lake Wingra, and I literally saw like 4 land in, and I was like, they're just all in groups all over the place. But what is happening is a 12-member committee called the Study Committee on Sandhill Cranes, which is a group of legislators, farmers, and waterfowl conservationists, had their first meeting yesterday to figure out how to control the sandhill crane population. The biggest issue with the amount of cranes that are present, especially in the Madison area, is a lot of them are causing crop damage. And there are usually about tens of thousands of cranes that breed or migrate across Wisconsin each spring and fall. So now some states have been allowing hunting of sandhill cranes, and lawmakers even tried to make this happen in Wisconsin in the past, but nothing ever came of it. And the International Crane Foundation is stepping in, saying that it is important and we do not want to hunt the cranes because it's possible for folks to accidentally kill the endangered whooping cranes, as they look very similar to the sandhill cranes. So the foundation prefers farmers to instead use different chemicals on their crops to prevent crop damage and to keep the cranes away rather than directly hunting the cranes. So the good note and the happy note of the story is the committee is working really hard to figure out how to control this problem, how to protect the crops while also still protecting the cranes, both sandhill and the whooping cranes. So I'm interested to see kind of how that first meeting went. Like I said, it happened yesterday. So we'll kind of see how they best handle the crane population in Madison.
Cranes' rights. We love
cranes' rights. I'm for the cranes.
Yeah. For the cranes. I grew up in Baraboo. I volunteered at the International Crane Foundation. And I have had the same questions, like, what are we going to do? Like, they're doing really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels very icky to hunt them.
Yeah,
so,
that doesn't feel right to me. And there is just such too high of a probability of someone like having a really good shot on the wrong bird, right? Like that is a huge issue. My favorite thing about the Crane Foundation, and I learned this when my friend was like a volunteer over there, is that they have people that like dress up in crane costumes to feed the babies.
They do. They do.
Gosh. I want that job. That's the job goal.
You could get that job. You could get that job. I think.
Give me the suit. I'm going in. I'm ready to go in.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Commitment to making things better and commitment to conservation. We love it. It's another great Friday News Roundup. Ava Wojnowski, our interim newsletter editor. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Haley Sperling, our executive producer.
Always a pleasure.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, your host. We're produced by Phil Circus and Elizabeth Kama. Haley Sperling is our executive producer. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. Ava Wienowski is our interim newsletter editor. You can always get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. And hey, if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast episode with someone you take to the International Crane Foundation? See you back here Monday morning with more news from around the city. Until then, fly away home.